Claude's text now carries a watermark. Not a label, not a footer, not hidden characters. The words themselves, arranged so that anyone holding the right key can later measure the probability that Claude helped write them. It applies to new models across every surface. The consumer app, the coding agent, the API, the cloud partners, worldwide. And within months, per the same industry code, every major provider will be doing the same thing to their model's text. Most of today's coverage stops at that paragraph, usually with a scary thumbnail. So this video is the other part, the actual documents. The announcement and the technical FAQ went up this morning, and having read every line of both, I can tell you 3 things the headlines are missing. First, the mechanism is genuinely elegant, and you can understand it completely in about 2 minutes. Nothing is inserted into your text. There is no invisible ink to find, because there is no ink. The entire trick lives in a place you'd never think to look, and once you see it, you'll also see exactly where the watermark can't live, which turns out to be the most useful fact in the whole story, especially if you write code. Second, buried in the compliance section is one sentence about geography that I think is the most consequential line published by any lab this month. It's 22 words about why a European law just changed the default behavior of software for the entire planet, stated with a bluntness I did not expect. And third, what this can prove, what it can never prove, and the one entire category of models it will never touch. That last part lands squarely on what this channel is about, and it quietly redraws a ledger we've been keeping all year. Plan, what's actually happening, the mechanism, where the watermark fades, in their own words, the geography sentence, what it means for 3 kinds of people watching this, who pays, and the honest limits. Standards note, today's sources are the official announcement and the support documentation, both read in full as published this morning. Their claims about quality and privacy are quoted as their claims. The underlying technique is published research, and I'll point at it, and one thing checked directly, their public code shelf. More on that later, because what's not published is part of the story. Let's go. What's actually happening? The facts before the physics. The commitments from the documentation, models launched on or after August 2nd, 2026, mark their output from day 1. Older models get a transition period, with marking rolled out over the coming months. Coverage is total by design. The API, the consumer app, the coding agent, the co-work product, the chat integration, and the 3 big cloud platforms. The watermark is applied, their words, at the model level, meaning it exists in the model's output before any product touches it. There is no surface where the text comes out unmarked. 2 kinds of mark, and keeping them straight matters. Text gets a watermark woven into the words themselves. It travels with copy-paste and can survive some editing. Files get something completely different, a signed provenance note in the metadata, using the open C2PA standard, the same system camera makers use to record where a photo came from. The file's pixels don't change at all, the note just rides along, and their own FAQ is upfront about the consequence. Metadata can be stripped by a screenshot, a format conversion, a resave. The file mark is a luggage tag, the text mark is dye in the fabric. Very different durability, very different meaning. The reason for all of it is stated plainly. The EU's AI Act, specifically its transparency code for AI-generated content signed in July by, their figure, around 190 parties, including, quote, several other major AI providers who will be implementing their own watermarks. In force for the European market since August 2nd. So this isn't one company's initiative. It's an industry-changing state at once, each lab with its own key, and hold that phrase, its own key, because it comes back with teeth. The mechanism, 2 minutes, and it's beautiful. Here's the entire trick, and I mean the entire trick. A language model produces text 1 word at a time, and at every step it faces a menu. Sometimes the menu has one real option. After Isaac Newton's most famous work was called Principia, the next word is Mathematica and nothing else. But very often, most of the time in ordinary prose, several candidates are equally good. The weather was cold and overcast, gray. The meaning survives either way. In those moments, the model settles the tie with, effectively, a coin flip. Ordinary generation flips an ordinary coin. Watermarking replaces the coin. Instead of arbitrary randomness, the tie gets settled by a calculation seeded from 2 things, a secret key and the few words that came just before. The choice still behaves randomly. Gray here, overcast there, depending on context. And the FAQ is explicit that the method never promotes a word the model wouldn't naturally use. But now, the sequence of tie breaks isn't noise. It's noise with a signature. Anyone holding the key can take a passage, replay the calculation, and check. Do these word choices agree with the choices the key would have made? Match after match after match across a long passage, and the odds of coincidence collapse, and out comes a probability that the model was involved. Their own analogy is lovely and worth crediting, a board game where, instead of rolling dice, the players secretly take their rolls from the digits of pi. The game plays out identically. Random is random. But afterward, anyone who knows pi can inspect the move history and say, these dice were loaded with mathematics. Or in one line, the deck is shuffled by a formula instead of by hand, and only the formula's owner can recognize its own shuffle. Now the properties, all of which fall straight out of the design. Nothing is added to the text, their words, no hidden characters, no extra tokens, no cost, and they report no measurable speed impact. The published research behind the method, it's a version of the synth ID approach, published by DeepMind in Nature in 2024, from a family of ideas going back to a 2022 proposal by the computer scientist Scott Aronson, includes a live test on real traffic where users couldn't tell the difference in ratings. That's their evidence, and DeepMind's quoted as such. And the privacy claim, verbatim, the watermark carries no identifying information and can't be traced to a specific person, organization, or chat. It identifies the model's dice, not you. Here's the law I'd carve from this section, and it reframes everything downstream. The watermark is an entropy tax. It can only be paid where the model actually had a choice. Every place the text was free, a little signature. Every place the text was forced, nothing. Which brings us to the best part of the FAQ. Where the watermark fades, in their own words. Because the mark lives only in genuine choices, it fades exactly where choices disappear. And the FAQ walks through the cases with unusual honesty, including one genuinely great joke. Facts. A factual passage is full of forced moves. Their example, after 2 + 2 =, there is one right continuation. And then, deadpan, the FAQ adds, unless the model is talking about George Orwell's 1984. In which case, quote, there isn't an answer that's equally as good as 5. A compliance document with an Orwell joke about watermarking. Somebody enjoyed writing this. The point stands, accurate text is low-freedom text, and low freedom means a sparse mark. Code, and this one matters enormously for this audience. Code has to be exact. A different token isn't a stylistic variant, it's a build failure. So their words, code has generally less watermarking than some other forms of text. The mark surviving mainly in the places code allows taste, like comments, with, quote, negligible effect on the actual code produced. Notice what that means. The same property that makes code correct makes it nearly unmarkable. Determinism repels watermarks. We've spent a month on this channel watching good engineering push exactness out of prose and into deterministic tools. And here's the same principle from a completely different direction. Wherever there's only one right answer, there's nowhere for a signature to hide. Proofreading. If Claude fixes your grammar, nearly every word remains yours. So, their phrasing, there's very little, if anything, for the watermark to attach to. Your writing, lightly repaired, stays essentially yours in the statistics. Translations, the sharp opposite. A translation is watermarked fully because there, quote, every word is chosen by Claude. Same document, same ideas, total mark. Which crystallizes the deepest limitation, stated by their own FAQ. The watermark cannot distinguish Claude wrote this from Claude heavily edited this. It measures who chose the words, never whose ideas they were. Presence of the mark tells you a model held the pen at some point. It cannot tell you who was the author. And editing? Their answer, verbatim, is the fairest sentence in the document. Light editing probably won't remove the watermark completely. A complete rewrite where every word is replaced will. In the latter case, of course, it's arguable whether the text can any longer be described as AI-generated. The escape hatch exists, and using it costs you exactly the labor the watermark was measuring. One more boundary, and it's structural. A passage has to be long enough to carry signal. A sentence has a handful of coin flips. Statistically nothing. Confidence grows with length. Short quotes, snippets, single lines, effectively unmarkable by mathematics rather than policy. The 22 words about geography. Now the sentence I called the most consequential of the month. From the announcement, verbatim. We're applying watermarking globally at launch because we don't yet have a durable way to scope it by region. Read it twice. A European regulation applies to the European market, and the entire planet gets the change. Not as a value statement, but as an engineering admission. There is no durable way to know which text will end up where. Text is the most portable object ever invented. A model output generated in Ohio gets pasted into a document read in Lisbon within the minute. Region scoping a watermark is a fiction, and they said so out loud. This is the pattern with a name. One strict jurisdiction sets a rule. And because forking behavior per region costs more than complying everywhere, the strictest rule becomes the world's default. You've lived it before with privacy banners and charging ports. Today it happened to the words themselves. And per the same code, with around 190 signatories, it's happening across the industry at once, each provider with its own key and potentially its own method. which quietly sets up tomorrow's mess. There will be no universal "was this AI" check. There will be one detector per key holder, a Claude check, a check from each of the other labs, each answering only for its own dice, fragmented provenance, by construction, and on detection. Here's the part I verified directly this morning. The FAQ promises a detection API soon, details being worked out, and the public code shelf is empty. No detector, no spec, nothing on their GitHub as of this recording. The policy shipped before the tooling. For a company that published its production document skills 2 weeks ago, that gap is worth naming and worth watching, because the day a detector spec or reference implementation appears is the day this story gets its technical sequel. And that coming detector raises the question neither document answers, and it's the one to watch. Who gets to check? A detection key is not a neutral object. If the detector is public, anyone can screen anything. Every teacher, every editor, every hiring manager, every forum moderator. If it's gated, then whoever holds access holds a new kind of authority, the ability to attach an official probability to someone else's words. The documents say only that they'll support users and other third parties in detecting marks with details and forthcoming guidance. That phrase, "and other third parties," is doing a lot of quiet work. The watermark itself is neutral mathematics. The access policy for reading it is pure politics, and it hasn't been written yet. When that documentation lands, it gets its own video, because the power in this system lives entirely on the reading side. But what this means for 3 kinds of people watching. If you publish writing with AI anywhere in your loop, drafts, edits, translations, and let's be honest, in 2026, that's a large share of everyone. What changes is not identity, but checkability. The mark carries no name, no organization, no chat, their explicit claim, so this is not tracking. But institutions that hold detector access will, over time, be able to attach a probability to a passage. The practical geometry follows the mechanism. Your own words, lightly proofread, barely register. A fully machine-drafted essay registers strongly, and everything between is a gradient. The document effectively defines a new literacy, knowing which parts of your workflow leave fingerprints. Run the ladder once and you know it forever. A fully machine-drafted article. Strong mark. A machine translation of your own writing. Full mark. Every word chosen for you. Your essay after grammar cleanup. Faint to nothing. The code file. Near nothing by design. And the 40-word post, whoever wrote it. Mathematically nothing at all. Too short to carry signal. 5 rungs, and now you can place any piece of text in your life on one of them. And a related note, they're FAQ volunteers with a straight face. The third-party detector companies, the ones without keys, work by phrasing tells instead. And the FAQ names too. An overfondness for "this isn't X, it's Y," and using the word quietly far more than humans do. Consider that word officially on notice. Everywhere, including, yes, channels like this one. If you're a developer, 2 facts pull in opposite directions. And both are load-bearing. Your generated code is, by their own description, barely marked. Exactness leaves no room. But the API is fully covered at the model level. So the prose your product emits through their models carries the mark into whatever you ship. And the docs close with a pointed paragraph. If you deploy these models in your own product, the transparency law's obligations may be yours too. Assess independently, guidance coming. If your product turns model output into user-facing text, that paragraph is your homework this week. And if you run models locally, this channel's home ground. Here's the structural fact of the day. A sampling watermark is applied at generation time by whoever controls the sampler and holds the key. Open weights on your own hardware. You are the sampler. There is no key. The output of your local model is unwatermarked by construction, not as a loophole, but as a direct consequence of what watermarking is. The own versus rent ledger this channel keeps just gained its strangest row yet. Rented text is now signed by the vendor's dice. Owned text is signed by no one. 2 honest counterweights immediately. Absence of a watermark proves nothing. Their own limitations section says so verbatim. Lack of a detected mark doesn't mean the content wasn't AI generated. And the tell-based detectors don't care whose hardware the habits came from. So local output isn't invisible. It's just not signed. But the asymmetry is real. It's permanent. And everyone deciding between hosted and local for a given task now has one more genuinely new variable in the equation. Who pays and who's actually served? Find the invoice. This one is unusual. The driver is law, not strategy. The cost lands on providers as compliance, and the FAQ's tone is closer to, here's how we're making the best of a legal requirement, than to a product launch. The future surface worth watching commercially is the detection API. Access policy for detectors will matter more than the watermark itself, because whoever can check holds the actual power this system creates. And the fairness question deserves one honest minute, because their own documents concede its premise. A watermark proves presence, never absence. Cooperating labs sign their text. Anyone determined to deceive will use tools that don't, including, as we just discussed, the open models this channel covers weekly. So the system doesn't catch the determined, it makes the default honest. Whether an honesty layer that binds the cooperative is worth building is a genuine policy debate, but it's the same logic as every receipt, signature, and audit trail civilization already runs on, none of which stop a determined forger either. A watermark is a receipt, not a lie detector. Their limitations section to its credit says as much in its own words. That's honest limits. 5. 1. The sources are the vendor's own documents. The announcement and the support article. Read in full is published this morning. Quality claims, privacy claims, robustness claims. Theirs, quoted as theirs, with the DeepMind study as their cited evidence. 2. There is nothing to test yet. The detection API is soon. No public detector or spec exists. Checked directly this morning. Every robustness claim, including how much editing the mark survives, is currently unfalsifiable from outside. 3. The underlying technique is real, published research, the Nature paper and its lineage, and my explanation of the mechanism follows that literature. The specific implementation details of this deployment, the key handling, the exact variant, are not public. 4. Rollout is a moving target. Older models, over the coming months, partner platform support varying, regional posture explicitly provisional. Their word was that they'll continue to evaluate. This video is a photograph of day 1. 5. Nothing here is legal advice. For the EU Act, for your obligations as a builder, or for anything else. The documents themselves tell deployers to assess independently. So do I. So, step back. The internet has run for 30 years on text with no provenance at all. Words arrived from nowhere, authorless by default, and we built everything on top of that. What shipped this morning is the first mass-scale crack in that default. A signature woven into word choice itself, invisible, tokenless, statistical, presence provable, absence meaningless. Every major provider following with its own key, files tagged by an open standard, a detection layer coming, and a long, strange transition to live through first. Older models won't carry marks for months yet, so for the foreseeable future, the world holds authentic, unmarked machine text, marked machine text, and human text, all mixed, which is precisely why their own documents repeat that absence proves nothing. The default flips model by model, not all at once. And the deepest thing in the documents isn't the cryptography. It's the boundary line the mechanism draws without meaning to. The watermark lives exactly where the model was free and vanishes exactly where the text was forced. Facts don't carry it. Code barely carries it. Your own proofread words don't carry it. What carries it is choice, which means what's really being signed in the end is the model's voice. The one thing this whole year of engineering has been teaching us to notice. So here's my question, and I'll pin it below. Does this change your split between hosted and rented models and the ones you own? And for which tasks specifically? Not in principle, in practice. The email, the documentation, the fiction, the code. Name the task that just moved from one column to the other and why. I think the answers will map this change better than any policy analysis could. Every link, the announcement, the support documentation, the Nature paper behind the method, the C2PA standard, and this channel's local model breakdowns for the other side of the ledger is in the description. Read the FAQ yourself. It's the rare compliance document with jokes in it. That's the standard here. The documents actually read, the mechanism taught, the claims labeled with their owners, and the one empty shelf reported too. If you'd rather own your tools than rent them, subscribe. That's what we do every single day. I'll see you in the next one.